Imagine this, an entire village just gone. No bodies, no skeletons, not even a sign of a fight. All that's left is a single, chilling word carved into a wooden post. This is, without a doubt, America's oldest and most haunting cold case, the lost colony of Roanoke.
Okay, so let's set the scene. The year is 1590. A lone English supply ship finally drops anchor off Roanoke Island, right on the coast of what we now call North Carolina. The governor, John White, has been stuck in England for 3 excruciatingly long years, and he's finally back. Back for his family, his friends, his entire colony.
You see, he had to leave behind 115 people. These weren't just soldiers, they were men, women, and children. And among them was his own daughter Eleanor and his granddaughter Virginia Dare, who was actually the very first English child born in the Americas.
But when he and his men get to shore, there's nothing. The entire settlement has vanished. Now, what's really weird is that the houses haven't been burned or ransacked. They've been carefully, almost surgically, dismantled. There are no bodies, no signs of a struggle. It's like all 115 of them just evaporated.
The only thing they find, the only clue in this entire ghost town, is a single cryptic word carved deep into the wooden palisade that surrounded the settlement: Croatoan.
So yeah, what John White stepped into was a true ghost town. No evidence of a battle, no human remains, nothing. It was like the whole colony just packed up and walked away. But to where? And more importantly, why? To even begin to understand what might have happened, we have to rewind the clock 3 years. Because the story of how these 115 souls ended up on Roanoke in the first place is this perfect storm of bad luck, bad blood, and one incredibly stubborn ship's pilot.
Here's the thing. The colonists were never supposed to build their permanent home on Roanoke. The real plan was to go about 100 miles north to the much safer, more fertile lands of the Chesapeake Bay. But their pilot, a hot-headed privateer named Simon Fernandez, he had other plans. He was itching to get back to the Caribbean to do what he did best, raid Spanish treasure ships. So he flat out refused to sail any further. He forced all 115 of them ashore, basically abandoning them miles from where they were supposed to be.
And they weren't landing on some pristine, untouched island. Oh no, they were walking right into a crime scene. A few years earlier, an English military expedition had set up camp there and had been absolutely brutal to the local Croatoan tribe. They'd even gone so far as to behead their chief. So when the new settlers arrive, they don't just find an overgrown fort. They find the bleached bones of an English soldier left right out in the open. The message was loud and clear. The local tribes had not forgotten, and they had definitely not forgiven. Still, you have to remember, this was a community of families. They tried to make a go of it, to build a life. And on August 18, 1587, there was this little glimmer of hope. Virginia Dare was born, a tiny symbol that maybe, just maybe, this new English world could actually survive and thrive. But that hope, it didn't last long. A massive drought was killing their crops, and their relationship with the natives was going from bad to worse.
They were getting desperate. So the colonists begged their governor, John White, to sail back to England for supplies and reinforcements. He really didn't want to go. I mean, he'd be leaving his daughter and his brand new granddaughter behind, but he agreed. Before he left, they came up with a plan, a signal. If the colony had to move, they would carve their new location into a tree, and if they were in danger, they'd add a cross above the name. White thought he'd be back in a few months, but then war broke out with the Spanish Armada, and every last ship in England was commandeered for the fight. He wouldn't see Roanoke again for 3 long years.
Which brings us back to 1590, with John White walking through this eerily empty settlement. Now, he's not panicking, not yet. He's calm, and he's looking for that signal they agreed on. He starts a methodical search. He notes the houses are dismantled, not destroyed. He finds some of their heavier items have been buried, which suggests a really orderly departure. And crucially, there are no bodies, no blood, no signs of a fight. Then he finds it. First, the letters CRO carved on a tree. And then he sees the full word, Croatoan, carved prominently on the main fort palisade. Now here is the most important part of this whole story. To John White, this wasn't some cryptic mystery. It was a message, plain and simple. Croatoan was a nearby island, what we call Hatteras Island today, and it was the home of their most trusted native ally, a man named Manteo. And even more importantly, there was no Maltese cross carved above the word. This meant his family and all the other colonists had moved, and they had moved peacefully to a safe place.
So if he knew exactly where they went, why on earth do we call it the Lost Colony? Well, the answer is just a gut-wrenching twist of fate that meant the most obvious lead in the case was never, ever followed up on. Just as White was getting ready to sail the 50 miles south to Croatoan Island, a monster of a storm rolled in. The seas got so rough that the ship's main anchor cable snapped, leaving them totally at the mercy of the storm. With the weather getting worse by the minute, the captain made a tough call. He aborted the search and sailed for the Caribbean. But the ship was eventually blown way off course and forced all the way back to England. John White never got another chance. He died years later, never knowing for sure what happened to his daughter and granddaughter.
For years, the story just went cold. Then, in 1607, when the Jamestown colony got started, these strange rumors started to surface. Some of the Jamestown colonists said they heard from natives about English-speaking survivors living in different villages. But others told a much darker story, that the powerful Chief Powhatan had confessed to wiping out the entire colony himself. The reports were completely contradictory.
So, what do we think today? I mean, for over 400 years, historians, archaeologists, and scientists have been piecing together all the clues, and that's led to a few major theories about what really happened to the colony.
The most widely accepted theory, the one with the most evidence, is that the colonists did exactly what their message said. They went to Croatoan Island. Unable to survive on their own after years of drought and isolation, they'd likely just assimilated, becoming part of Manteo's people. And get this, archaeological digs on Hatteras Island have actually found European artifacts from that exact time period mixed right in with native village sites. That's pretty strong support for this idea.
Now, another really compelling theory suggests that the group might have split up. Researchers discovered a hidden symbol for a fort on one of John White's own maps, pointing to a location about 50 miles inland. At this spot, which they've nicknamed Site X, archaeologists have found 16th century English pottery. So it's possible a smaller group went to Croatoan to leave the message, while the majority of the colonists tried to find refuge further inland.
And of course, we have to consider the massacre theory. It's certainly possible that a part of the colony, maybe that group that moved inland, was attacked and killed by a hostile tribe, just like Chief Powhatan claimed. But here's the problem with that. Archaeologists have never found any physical evidence, no mass grave, no battlefield, of a large-scale slaughter at any of the potential locations.
So when you look at all the hard evidence we have, it really points overwhelmingly in one direction. The idea that they integrated with native tribes or made a planned relocation has way more archaeological and historical backing than the theories about a violent massacre or that they were all somehow lost at sea.
And this, really, is the key takeaway. The colonists were never truly lost in some great spooky mystery. The reality is, they were abandoned. They were left to fend for themselves, and they made a logical, rational decision to relocate in order to survive. They even left a clear message for the rescue party that because of a whole series of terrible misfortunes never came looking in the right place.
Which leaves us with one final, fascinating question. Was this the tragic end of an English colony wiped from the map by disease or war? Or was it a new beginning? The story of a group of survivors who endured by joining a new culture, their descendants living on, their English identity simply fading into the vast American landscape. That is the real and far more interesting legacy of Roanoke.